Story 1: The Jack-O-Lantern Man. Every year on Halloween, the houses along Red Ash Lane glowed with carved pumpkins. Some cheerful, some menacing, some lazy squiggles done by tired parents. But one year, a stranger appeared at the very end of the cul-de-sac. Nobody knew who he was or when the house had been sold, but when night fell, the biggest pumpkin anyone had ever seen sat on the porch. It wasn't carved with the usual jagged grin. Its face was long, narrow, and human-like, with deep hollows for eyes that seemed to follow children as they passed. Some swore the glow inside it flickered like a real heartbeat. The man who lived there, tall, hunched, always in an old black coat, sat behind it in a wooden chair, handing out candy without speaking. The kids named him the Jack-O-Lantern Man. They dared each other to knock, to stare into the strange carved face, to snatch an extra candy. Parents avoided his eyes. No one admitted it out loud, but when he looked at you, you felt like he was deciding whether to keep you. That night, 12-year-old Mason went back after curfew carrying his phone flashlight. He wanted proof. He wanted to win the bet his friends made. The porch was empty, the huge pumpkin still glowing. The chair was there, but not the man. Mason stepped closer. The pumpkin's lid rose and fell as if the pumpkin itself was breathing. A whisper pushed out of the carved mouth. "One more light for the lantern." Mason froze. His flashlight flickered. The glow from inside the pumpkin grew brighter, pulsing like a furnace. He tried to back away, but his shoes stuck to the wood as though the boards themselves held him. The carved face stretched wider, the jagged teeth bending open. Inside wasn't a candle at all. It was a pit of flames, and in those flames, other faces flickered. Children's faces, hollow-eyed, mouths open in silent screams. The Jack-O-Lantern Man appeared at Mason's shoulder. His coat smelled of smoke. He pressed one long hand against Mason's back and whispered, "Trick or treat." The scream that followed never reached Mason's throat. By morning, the pumpkin was gone. The porch was bare as if no one had lived there at all. Only one new detail remained on Red Ash Lane. At the base of an old oak tree, a pumpkin grew that year. Bigger than the rest, and its ridges faintly resembled the outline of Mason's terrified face. Story 2: The Last Train. Halloween night was the only time the old train still ran. At least, that's what the legends said. The station had been closed for years, the tracks rusted, the schedule erased. But people whispered, if you waited on the platform at midnight, a single train would appear, headlights cutting through the fog. Harper didn't believe it. He was a college freshman, home for the weekend, humoring his cousin Jess. She begged him to go, said she wanted a story to tell her friends. Midnight came, and sure enough, the rails hummed. A light swelled down the line, too steady to be a car. The train screeched into the station, carriages old and black with gold trim. Its doors slid open without a sound. Inside, dim lamps glowed, seats upholstered in red velvet. No conductor, no other passengers. Jess dared Harper inside. They laughed nervously, choosing a booth. The doors hissed shut. The train lurched forward. At first it felt like any ride, the sway of wheels, the rattle of metal. But the windows showed nothing but darkness. No town, no countryside. Just black, rushing past like water. Harper checked his phone. No signal. Midnight had frozen on the screen. They heard footsteps. A figure appeared at the far end of the carriage. A woman in an old-fashioned dress, her skin pale as candle wax. She sat across the aisle without speaking. Her eyes were empty sockets, but tears still leaked down her cheeks. Jess gripped Harper's arm. The woman lifted one bony hand and pointed down the aisle. Another figure appeared, then another. The train filled, one by one. Miners with shattered helmets, nurses with bloody aprons, children holding broken toys. Every passenger carried the wound that killed them. The air grew cold, breath puffed white. The train wasn't taking them home. It was carrying them somewhere else. Harper pulled Jess toward the nearest door, but it wouldn't budge. The conductor finally appeared, a tall man with a skeleton's grin, his uniform moth-eaten. He bowed and spoke in a rasp. "Next stop, forever." The passengers turned toward them, mouths stretching open. Jess screamed. Harper slammed his shoulder into the door again and again until, miraculously, it gave way. They tumbled out onto gravel, rolling as the train wailed past. When Harper looked back, the station was gone. The tracks ended in weeds. But faintly, very faintly, they heard a whistle vanish into the night. The next morning, people found Harper and Jess asleep on the ground near the woods. No train tracks nearby, just earth, just silence. But Harper swore he still smelled the velvet seats, and on Jess's palm, burned into her skin like ash, was the outline of an old ticket stub. Story 3: The House with No Door. On the corner of Ashford Street stood a house everyone ignored. Not abandoned, its windows were intact, the lawn not overgrown, but wrong, in a way that made your eyes slide past it. Nobody had ever seen anyone go in or out. Most people swore it had no front door at all. One Halloween, Claire decided to prove it was just another house. She was 16, tired of ghost stories, tired of her friends daring each other but never following through. She marched across the cracked sidewalk and stood at the porch. Her friends waited nervously at the curb. The house looked ordinary up close. Porch swing, shutters, even a welcome mat. But there really was no front door, just a blank wall where one should have been. Claire ran her hands along the siding, searching. Her fingers caught on a crack. With a push, the wall swung inward like a door that had been hiding in plain sight. The others shouted for her to stop, but Claire stepped inside. The air was colder than outside, still as a tomb. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with mirrors. Each reflected her, but not quite. In one, she was older. In another, her face was bruised. In another, her body was twisted, broken. She walked deeper. Behind her, the door had vanished, replaced by solid wall. The mirrors began to whisper in voices that sounded like hers. "Stay. You belong here. You were always here." At the end of the hall, a staircase spiraled down into darkness. She felt pulled to descend. Each step creaked like bones breaking. At the bottom was a single room lit by a lantern. In the center stood a table, and on it, a book bound in leather. The cover bore no title. She opened it. Every page was blank, except the one in the middle. On that page was her name, written over and over in ink that never dried, letters bleeding as if alive. The lantern dimmed. The whispers grew louder. The mirrors from upstairs appeared along the walls, crowding closer, each reflection now moving on its own. pounding from inside the glass as though begging her to switch places. Claire tried to run back, but the stairs stretched endlessly, leading nowhere. She turned and found herself once again in the lantern room. The book sat open, and her name had multiplied until it filled every page. The whispers merged into a single voice. Now you are part of the house. The next morning, her friends swore she had only stepped inside for a second before the wall sealed shut again. They called her name, pounded on the siding, searched for hours. But Claire never came back out. Weeks later, neighbors began to notice something strange. The house now had a front door, a normal wooden door with brass numbers. And through the narrow window in its center, if you dared to look, you could see a girl's reflection standing in the hallway, forever trapped among the mirrors, watching, waiting for someone else to come inside.